The United Nations says it's documented the killing of at least 45 civilians in el-Obeid, the capital of Sudan's North Kordofan state. The killings took place between June 6th and June 28th. The UN has recorded at least 15 drone attacks on the city. More than 41 others were injured in the strikes. The paramilitary rapid support forces are battling the Sudanese military for control of el-Obeid and the surrounding areas. Meanwhile, the UN human rights chief is warning of a humanitarian catastrophe in North Kordofan. Volker Turk says drone strikes by both sides have targeted markets and schools, fuel stations and water facilities. More than 100,000 people have sought refuge in el-Obeid.
The international community cannot allow a repeat of the widespread atrocities that took place in Zamzam camp for displaced people and in Al-Fashar in North Darfur last year. My office assessed that at least 6,000 people were killed in the span of just 3 days when the RSF captured Al-Fashar. We found the RSF and allied militia committed war crimes and crimes against humanity, including mass killings, summary executions, sexual violence and torture.
Joining us from Nairobi is Arjmand Hussain. He's Plan International's Regional Response Manager for Sudan. Thank you very much indeed for being with us on Al Jazeera. There are, as we were just saying, over 100,000 people who've been escaping the fighting and moving towards the city over the last several months, but there are hundred thousands more already in the city. What do people in the city actually need?
Well, thank you very much for having me on this program. Currently, the situation within al-Obeid city is really precarious. The civilians in the city are in a state of confusion for multiple reasons. Because one, the key public utilities like power and drinking water are largely unavailable in the city. And now we are also hearing that other critical needs, food and other key requirements are not available in the city. There was a UN-led review and preparedness exercise done a couple of days ago, and what we found is that there are two scenarios right now for the al-Obeid situation. One is that there is an anticipated large-scale population movement from the city towards the White Nile and the surrounding areas in case this siege situation persists. And the second scenario talks about a siege situation within the city, something very similar to what we have seen in other parts of Sudan in recent years. So our assessment suggests that existing food stocks are sufficient barely for 1 month for about 250,000 people. And as we know that the city is actually home to about 550,000 people, including about 100,000 people who have taken refuge there, coming from other conflict-affected areas in the North and South Kordofan, including the Diling and Kadugli areas down in the south. And then we are also hearing that there is a major shortfall of about 8,500 emergency shelters in the situation. You know, our own assessment plans, own assessments on the ground, our offices and our personnel on the ground have been doing these assessments, and they suggest that, you know, emergency shelters are required in both the scenarios. In case the populations choose to move eastwards towards the East Nile, White Nile state, and these emergency shelters are also required if the population decides to stay put in the city in case there is a protracted siege-like situation there. So we are also, you know, concerned about the protection of children and girls and women in the city, as we have seen from other siege-like situations in other parts of Sudan, that children and women bear the brunt of these catastrophic situations, as how the Human Rights Council has noted yesterday. As per our assessment, there are still 55,000 children in al-Obeid who are in the need of basic protection. So despite organizations, despite UN agencies trying their best to provide whatever services we could muster in these circumstances funding is not adequate, services are not adequate.
Let me
and we
just ask you about
talking
the logistics element of this, because you touched on it just a moment ago, and it is key. My understanding was that the city is essentially under siege by the RSF. How difficult is it for agencies like yours to get aid into the people in this city, given the restrictions and the problems you've just been talking about?
You know, the only silver lining as of now is that we still have a safe corridor coming into the city from the eastern parts of Sudan. Unlike other, siege-like situations in Darfur in recent years, for example. So some degree of aid is still trickling into the city. But as we know that, there have been multiple drone attacks on aid convoys and also other commercial supply lines, which have really, made the situation more difficult. The commercial supply lines, the trucks and transportation agencies find it quite difficult to take the supplies into the city. And same is the case with the UN and other interagency humanitarian supplies, which we are trying to get into the city. The situation is really not conducive for these operations because of the safety and security concerns for the personnel. And that's something that we are continuously asking all the warring parties to ensure that the humanitarian personnel.
Arjmand Hussain, Plan International's Regional Response Manager for Sudan. We appreciate you giving us that update. Thank you very much indeed, sir.